Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Elevated Feminine podcast. We're doing something a little bit different this time around, and we're all very excited about it. I'm Jen, and I'm coming in from Barbados, and I have with me my wonderful co-host,
Nicole from France.
welcome. And I'm glad that you can finally see her dancing around, because this is what you don't get to see, folks, when we just use the audio. She's always dancing around, and I love it. And now I feel like I want to join her too. And we should have a dance off at the end of recording this podcast, or maybe at the beginning, something. And you will see we have someone here with us today. We have the lovely Jasmine coming in. She's in Barbados as well. And she is a pelvic health physiotherapist, a yoga teacher, and lover of movement. Though her love for promoting pelvic health spans both men and women, Jasmine is especially passionate about encouraging women at all stages of life to focus and learn about their body and, of course, their pelvic health and their pelvic floor. Welcome, Jasmine. We are so excited to have you here. You can see our faces grinning from ear to ear. So, Jasmine, we're going to turn it right over to you and let you introduce yourself to our listeners. Go for it.
All right, so as Jen said, I'm Jasmine. I'm a pelvic health physiotherapist. So most people will know what a physio is. You think of a physio when, you hurt your back, you hurt your knee, your shoulder. We are the people who get you back to doing what you love to do. We're movement specialists. So you might have, a loss of function somewhere, and we can help you figure out why and get you back to that. We use a lot of different modalities, but one of the main ones is exercise therapy, or basically exercise specialists. But pelvic health physios, no, we kind of focus on more of the pelvis, but the pelvis is not in isolation. So we still have to look at your entire body. So people think you're a pelvic health physio and you only deal with the pelvis, you only deal with the pelvic floor. But, so many things in the body can impact the pelvis and the pelvic floor. So we still are a holistic physio. We still look at the whole body, but we're zeroed in on the pelvis. And because of that, we work a lot with women, especially work with men as well, and children. But because, women have so many different cycles of life that revolve around the pelvis, that is where you will find that when you think pelvic health, you think women's health. So anything from painful periods to pain with sex to incontinence, prepping for birth, any pelvic pain, etc. during pregnancy, anything pelvic health issues, postpartum, menopause, right up. And as I said, we also deal with men, especially after they have prostate surgery. Hello, Kitty. But there are many other things that we deal with men as well, and children. But yeah, that's basically a pelvic health physio in a nutshell. Yeah, but there's a lot to what we do.
Wow.
That's what I do, a yoga teacher as well. Yoga comes very close with pelvic health physiotherapy, so they're a perfect blend. As Jen said, I love to move my body, so yeah.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I honestly never thought about the pelvis in relation. I never even thought about men and having pelvises and needing help with that, to be honest with you. I never even considered them. And just so you all know, I am actually doing some work with Jasmine right now to help me with an abdominal injury. And I never even thought about the pelvis and how the pelvic floor and how that would have impacted what I've been going through in my recovery. So she is not kidding when she says they do look at every other aspect, because we're not just looking at whether I can lift my pelvic floor. We're looking at how my body functions in complete totality as it relates to holding a plank, or even just being on my back and lifting one leg up. So, wow.
It's
and
interesting
children
that you
too.
said that, because we actually call ourselves pelvic health, but it's all core, because the pelvic floor is part of the core. So any kind of core rehab and stuff we're very good at.
Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing is that if anybody out there has ever looked at an anatomy slide, and the three of us I know for sure are nerdy McNerds when it comes to this, is like the whole nervous system. If you look in the pelvic region, it just is an explosion
Yeah.
of nerve endings. And people just don't realize that whether you're a man or a woman, child, adult, old person, doesn't matter. We all have the same nervous system
Yeah.
structure.
True.
There's so
Yep.
much going on down there.
There is.
Yeah.
There's lots going on there. Physically, emotionally, yeah, energetically, the whole thing. Yeah.
Well,
Going on
and
with the pelvis.
I never, I guess because I never really had to think about it much deeper or much beyond, um, in teaching Pilates, that was the first time any attention was brought to the pelvic floor. And one of the ways I was taught is when you exhale through the pursed lips, it kind of activates the pelvic floor, and the pelvic floor kind of nudges the transverse abdominis to say, hey,
Yes.
you need to kick in now.
Yes.
And but so that's as deep as my relationship with the pelvic floor ever really went, at least as it relates to Pilates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I forgot until I started seeing you.
Yeah. And that's a pretty
to be
good
honest with you.
that's a pretty good understanding of it, to be honest. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important breathing is to your pelvic health and activating your pelvic floor and your core. So if there's one thing I want anybody listening to this to walk away with, is that like, breathing is key when it comes to pelvic floor activation, core activation, and coordination.
I actually want to ask you to dig a little bit deeper. Like,
Yeah,
is there a
sure.
particular way to breathe to get that connection? And what if, for example, oh, sorry, I was going to go a little bit deeper.
Go ahead.
What if, for example, like for me, I had an ovarian cystectomy. I was going to say several decades ago, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just say I had one. Okay, I had one in the past. Okay. And that connection to the pelvic floor, let alone feeling my lower abs kick in, was minimal, if I even had that connection at all. So speaking about how breathing, I mean, I just described how breathing activates, and you affirmed it. How, if you've been through that, a C-section or anything like that, where the lower abdomen muscles have been cut, how will breathing help you in that area in activating or reconnecting to the pelvic floor?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say if you had any type of C-section, abdominal scar, the first thing you can do to reconnect would be scar manipulation. Once the scar is healed, which is usually around after 6 weeks, but even before that, you can do light touch on the scar and stuff like that. But once it's healed, actually manipulating the scar. And there are lots of good videos by pelvic health physios on YouTube where you can actually go and learn how to do that. So that's the first thing, because if those muscles have that scar tissue in an area of tension, I always use like the example of a shirt. So if you start to wrinkle your shirt in one spot, the ripples go all the way down the shirt. And the same thing if you have a scar, it's not just that area. So I'm gonna pull up my pelvis. If you have a scar here, so this is your pelvis, this is the front, right? Front, back, bottom, this is the pelvis floor. So,
sorry, I'm just laughing and say, I'm going to pull up my pelvis. Not her actual pelvis.
Not my actual pelvis. But if you have a scar in the area, you can see that there's not just this that separates where that scar is from your pelvic floor. So whatever is happening, as Jen just said, your pelvic floor and your abdominals are kind of like they're friends. They kind of want to do what the other is doing. So if this is contracted, this wants to contract and vice versa. So the first thing I would say, because of the close proximity of any scar here to your pelvic floor, and because these two like to work together, the first thing to do is release this scar. If you have a scar from any kind of abdominal surgery. The second thing would be your breathing. So normally after abdominal surgery or like even pregnancy, delivery, you will find that there's a little bit of a disconnect between the core muscles. And in the context of this conversation, we're talking about core as pelvic floor. So down here, we're talking about abdominals, and we're talking about diaphragm. So people forget that important part. Back as well, but we're talking especially these three and diaphragm. So they work together. So when your diaphragm moves down, like this for you to inhale, and air comes in. It creates a little bit of pressure in your tummy because this is pressing down, and then your pelvic floor moves down as well. So your pelvic floor relaxes. When you breathe out, your diaphragm goes up, the pressure in here is kind of relieved, and your pelvic floor moves up. So that is what Jen was talking about. So that moving up is a contraction. So when you breathe out, that is the best time for you to actually engage your pelvic floor and your abdominals. So by breathing, practicing that inhale, nice big inhale, everything expands. And when you exhale, everything deflates. You get those muscles to remember, okay, this is how we're supposed to work. We're supposed to expand on the inhale and contract on the exhale. And then when you may think, well, why is that important? Because when you do things like sneeze, that's an exhale. And we want those muscles to engage so that urine doesn't come out. When you do things like lift, you want to exhale so that those muscles are not puffing out for pressure to go down here. You want them to contract to keep everything nice and strong. So this is where breathing is important. If you can get your body to learn that pattern. Now, if you're listening to the podcast, I want you to think, put your hand on your tummy. So put a finger on your tummy. And I want you to engage your abdominals. And most people will inhale to do that. So see what you did. Did you inhale to do it, or did you exhale?
I definitely inhaled.
I don't know. I just squeezed them. I don't know.
So most people, when they think, okay, I'm going to tighten my tummy, they go. But we just went through that when you inhale is when your body wants to do this. And it's very common, and most people would get away with it. But then when something happens like surgery or pregnancy or anything like that, then it can get a little muddy. So when you are engaging your abdominals, you want to think, breathe out and engage. The other thing is if you put your hands on your tummy, when you engage your abdominals, you should feel your abdominals coming in. You shouldn't feel them poking out. So a lot of people will engage their abs and kind of poke outwards. But if you poke outwards, your pelvic floor is also going down. So those muscles work together. So imagine if you think, okay, I'm going to engage my abs to go and lift this heavy thing, and you're bracing outwards. You're just putting a lot of pressure on those organs and on your those pelvic organs in here and on your pelvic floor. So it's important to learn, okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to pull, I'm going to push, I'm going to lift. I need to breathe out and engage my muscles that way. And if you're struggling, the best place to go is a pelvic health physio to learn how to do it. I don't really like to explain it a lot over. That's why, Jen, you've not seen me make any videos on this on my Instagram, because I'm like, it's so important for people to get that attention to make sure they're doing it right. Because most people don't.
No, it's true.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that totally makes sense, because even, oh, sorry, Jen.
No, go ahead.
This is what happens when we have international Zoom calls. There's lag time.
Yes.
I was just saying, and it makes perfect sense. And it made me laugh when you had us engage our abdominals, and I definitely inhaled when I did that, and I know better. So I still have that default from way back when, before I learned all of that, because even when I was doing, like teaching power yoga, it was definitely a conversation that I would have with students, is how to contract the abdominal muscles properly.
Yes.
As opposed to, and really talking to people and like having them notice what they're doing. So it made me laugh, because I teach this too. And as soon as you're like, do this, I'm like, wait, what am I inhaling, exhaling? What?
Exactly. It happens to the best of us. Even me, after I had my daughter, it was a lot of like, what? Like Twilight Zone, like, what do you do? So it was a lot of, it happens to all of us, even me.
So funny.
Well, I mean, like I said, I forgot. I absolutely forgot about that whole relationship between the pelvic floor and the lower abs, and the fact that they work, with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, listeners, we're going to take a quick break and get back. I'm so excited to continue this conversation with Jasmine. But we'll be back in a few moments. Hi there, I'm Jen, co-host of the Elevated Feminine podcast, where real women have real conversations. If there's a topic you're passionate about and want to share your views and ideas, then we want to hear from you. Send us an email at elevatedfeminine9@gmail.com. We can hardly wait to have a conversation with you.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We are here talking with Jasmine, and we're talking about pelvic health here. And we had a little discussion off camera. It usually happens, can't be helped. Real women, real conversations here means that we're all chatty. And we got to talking about Kegels. And so, Jasmine, I really wanted to hear from you about Kegels, because I think, and we confirmed it in our conversations, but I'd read recently that the whole Kegel movement is not necessarily what's best for us.
Yeah, so Kegels are not, so people, when you're talking, I mean, I think women are starting to talk more about what's going on in terms of, oh, after, surgery or after I had a baby or whatever, I am leaking. And, sometimes it didn't happen after baby. It could be, a person who sneezes a lot, coughs a lot, severe allergies, things like that. And it's like, okay, I'm leaking. And then sadly, you can hear it from medical professionals, but also your friends. That you know what, you need to do Kegels. Yeah, that's the first bit of advice that you're going to get. But the importance, I'm not saying this because I'm tooting pelvic health physios' horns, but
And even if you were.
well, the truth is, you have to have your pelvic floor assessed in order to figure out are Kegels what you need. And the reason is because sometimes your pelvic floor can actually be overactive. Right? And that overactivity can cause things like incontinence. It can cause things like you not making it to the bathroom on time, rushing to the bathroom. You think, okay, I'm in a meeting and suddenly I have this big urge and I need to run. And you think, okay, I need to strengthen my pelvic floor. But actually, that might not be what you need. And I'm going to explain to you because most people feel like if I'm leaking, it means that those muscles are weak. And yes, but they may not be weak because they are low tone. So tone is, I guess, the state of a muscle. It could be low, where it's like long, and we consider that to be weak. But the tone can also be high, where the muscle is really tight, and that causes dysfunction. So for a muscle to be functional, it has to be able to lengthen and it has to be able to shorten. But people often forget about the lengthening part. So I always use the example of a bicep, right? So if this is my bicep, it can lengthen, I can pick up my water bottle, it can shorten, I can put my water bottle to my mouth. But if my bicep is too long, I can pick this up, but I can't bring it to my mouth, right? If my bicep is tight and really short, I can't reach to pick it up, my bottle. So my bicep is not functional. The same thing happens with the pelvic floor. If the muscles are too tight, they can't give that last bit of contraction when you sneeze because they're stuck in that position. So now nothing can come out. Right? If those muscles are really tight, they're going to squeeze your bladder. So your bladder is in here. They put extra pressure on your bladder, and then your bladder feels like it needs to wee when it doesn't. So many times when you have pelvic floor dysfunction, you need to go to your pelvic health physio. They'll do an exam. And a lot of times, even if you feel like you're shy and you don't want to have the exam, there are a lot of questions we can ask you to figure out, is your pelvic floor overactive? Are you pushing to wee? Like when you go to wee, does it come out easy or do you have to push? Are you straining to stool? Do you have pain with sex? Do you have burn or pain when you urinate? Many different questions that we can ask you. Are you a person who has pain a lot? Are your periods really painful every month? We can do these things to figure out where your pelvic floor is and kind of gauge if you need to relax your pelvic floor first to get it to actually, a muscle that can relax will give a much better contraction than a muscle that's here. Like that is not going to be as strong as this. So the point of this whole long explanation is you don't have, if you have pelvic floor dysfunction, Kegels are not always the answer. You shouldn't do them right away without consulting with the pelvic health physio and getting at least a chat with them to figure out if your pelvic floor can be overactive and maybe even a pelvic floor exam to see.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, it does. That was such a great explanation of the differences between the two, because I know sometimes you would think that if a muscle is short or contracted, it's strong, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's strong, especially if it's been in that position for a prolonged period of time. It will. Yeah. And if you look at something super, super tight, eventually it will weaken, right?
Yeah, and it gets tired. So in there, it can't do its job.
Gosh, I knocked my own question out of my head. Nicole, did you have something that you were going to ask?
No, I was just going to elaborate.
See if mine comes back. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think elaborate I love the example you gave about the contracting and the elastic, because it's interesting, because even when I'm talking about, so I'm a holistic nutritionist as well. And so it's very similar. Obviously, it's a different area of the body, but when people have GERD or acid reflux, it's a very similar issue. People automatically assume it means they don't have enough gastric acid.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have too much, sorry, but it's actually that they don't have enough. And so it's
Oh,
interesting. It's interesting that there's these similarities throughout the body, and you know, our assumptions are, the logic says, if I wee when I sneeze, or when I'm running, or when I jump, obviously it means I have this weak pelvic floor. But it's really fascinating how the body can have two polar opposite extreme situations, but it still can produce the same result. And that's why it's so important to be curious.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
And
coordination, no, you go, Jen. Do you remember your question?
Well, I think I was going to ask, because we said that Kegels aren't necessarily the answer depending on which side of the fence you're on with the pelvic floor. So if it's too tight, what can you do to bring the pelvic floor back to a sense of elasticity, or at least relax?
Yeah, so the first thing we want to do is your breathing, back to breathing. And my patients, they roll their eyes, so it's like breathing, but yeah, it always comes back to breathing. So we just said, remember we said if you take a big breath in, your diaphragm moves down and your pelvic floor moves down. So sometimes you find that persons who have an overactive pelvic floor, when their breathing just stuck up in their chest, and they're not actually getting those diaphragmatic breaths, that expansion here. So we can get that pattern going of breathing, expansion. So we might need to actually help them with their thoracic mobility. So twists, like bends, folds, to get them more movement in their ribs. So when they breathe in, they can get that expansion, which will then happen at their pelvic floor. And then hip openers, anything to stretch the abdominals, the hip muscles, hamstrings. But sometimes people also need help, and we can then go in with manual therapy. So actually go in and help them stretch these muscles, teach them how to do it. And there are a lot of other tools that you can use as well. Like in C1 right now, I can run and go and get it.
Yes.
sure.
Get it.
Yes,
Get it. Get it. Really, I want to see this. I did not know that you could do actual manual manipulation of the pelvic floor.
Neither did I. It's so interesting because, I mean, the pelvis does so much, even in men. And it's just fascinating to me that there's so much about our bodies that we don't know and that we take for granted. And if we just spend a little time being curious, we can live just like such productive and happy and mobility freedom lives that it's just good.
Yeah, there has to be balance. You can't go any, too far one way will cause problems. So you can have, as I said, I will do the pelvic floor assessment. Let's say, for example, somebody has a really overactive pelvic floor because of maybe things like anxiety, things like depression. You had a episiotomy. So episiotomy is a little cut here when you're giving birth. It could be from a C-section as well, causing tension here. It could be from just your person who has tight hips, muscle imbalances, a weak core, and here is deciding to kind of overwork to compensate, right? So you do your assessment. I might actually do stretches in here, going here. Sometimes in here has trigger points. So these are the pelvic floor muscles that can cause pain down the legs and different places. But you can actually do, so this is a pelvic wand. And you can use this and you would actually do it yourself. So this whole somebody can actually release their pelvic for themselves. So they'll insert here and it only goes double up to here. Yeah. Then you gently stretch down. You can stretch the side. Because this is angled this way, so when it goes in, you can then get into these muscles in here. So if I identify for somebody that you have a trigger point here, and this is what's causing pain in your glutes and your leg, they can actually go in then at home and reach that spot and release it that way. Right? So
I had no idea there were tools for that.
Right? Yeah. And I always tell people, you're not alone. Look, people made tools for this, so it is something real. Right?
Yeah.
And then there are also something called dilators that you can use as well to help stretch the pelvic floor if you're having pain with penetration. So like inserting a tampon, have any kind of penetration sex, you can use these as well with the guidance of your pelvic health physio.
So
So
what about, my mind is blown. I mean, seriously, I have like a bazillion and one questions
I'm
running
like,
around in
and
my
the
head.
questions are in.
Because I wanted to segue to the yoni egg, and is that beneficial to use as well?
Yes. So
She's going for one?
Of course she has one. Of course she has a yoni egg. 100%.
Oh, I have
so
a, I bought, I,
yoni eggs are beneficial, but for somebody who needs to actually work on shortening and somebody who
strengthening.
Kegels are good for, right?
Okay.
So these are,
Right.
I guess
Okay.
these are, they're not really yoni eggs, and that is not like a crystal, but these are vaginal weights. So they have
Oh,
different strengths.
okay.
So they're good for people who need to work on strength, but also people who are like, I don't know what I'm doing on my pelvic floor. Is it lifting? Is it what? And then you insert the weight, they go, oh yeah, I can
Okay.
feel that. So these are good as well. So the yoni eggs are good
Okay.
once Kegels are good for you.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Well, I have a story about a yoni egg, but we'll save that for another time. It's hilarious, actually. But yeah, we're not going to go there. Oh gosh, I was going to ask something. I think what blew my mind too just now was when you mentioned about going in there with the wand to, if you had a trigger point on one side of the pelvis, going in there with the wand, and that might help with your glute.
Yeah, so
Again, mind blown.
yeah.
I have a client who is presenting with piriformis syndrome, and I'm her wondering now. And she's had multiple. She's had a C-section, and I'm wondering now if what's presenting as piriformis could be something that's happening with her
Piriformis is
pelvis.
really, really close to the pelvic floor. So you can actually, but you have to go deep, but get to the piriformis from here. So piriformis and pelvic
Wow.
floor.
No, again, mind blown. Hey, this is Bijou, everyone, our executive producer. She comes in ever so often to keep us on track.
Make sure we stay productive.
Yeah,
Yes,
as soon as I start talking, she tries to climb my leg. If I don't pick her up, I get claws in me. So,
so yeah, she pops in ever so often to keep us on track. But yes, so okay, so that's actually blowing my mind, really and truly. This has been such an exciting conversation. Ooh, any questions, Nicole? Because
yeah. I was
know.
just curious about, so there's a lot of people that I've worked with in the past. I don't teach yoga quite so much anymore these days, although I hope to get back to it soon. I've been feeling the call and hearing the call. But a lot of one-on-one clients I were working with had sciatic pain. And I'm curious because I know the sciatic nerve runs through there as well. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how that could even be impacting, because you mentioned it a little bit in how, like you can feel pain down your legs and into your feet and things like that too. So I was wondering if you could touch on that a little bit, because I think that's a really common symptom that people experience. And there's a lot of different, and they don't realize it could be a lot of different things.
Yeah, so referred pain. Most people think, okay, if I'm having nerve pain, it must be coming from my spine. So here, the nerves come through here into your legs, and then from higher up, they go into your arms. So people think, okay, the only place that I could be having these neural symptoms will be from my spine. But really and truly, your nerves are passing through muscles, right? And if those muscles are tight, or if those muscles are not working the way they should and kind of irritating an area, and a nerve is there, you're going to end up having, so this is something I explain to patients all the time, you're going to end up having neural symptoms where that nerve refers to, right? And so if you have like piriformis syndrome is one, people with tight glutes, overactive pelvic floor, there's a nerve down there called the pudendal nerve, and you'll find out where that goes, where that runs to. So you'll have like vulvar pain. So vulvar pain will be like pain between your legs, perineal pain. And so that can be coming from nerves being irritated in those muscles. And by relaxing those muscles, breathing, stretching, eventually strengthening as well, you can get those muscles to be working in a more functional way, and you can get that irritation to subside and manage that irritation as well.
It's so interesting because I wish everybody took the time to learn about the body, because I mean, even if you're not nerdy about it like we are,
Yeah.
it's just so cool how you could have a pain in your shoulder, but it's originating from your lower back, or you could have
Somewhere
a pain
else.
in your big toe and it originates from your left shoulder, and it's
Yeah.
just
The back of your head.
everything.
No, yeah.
Exactly. And even the example you did where you twisted your shirt, when I try to explain to my yoga students about fascia and how everything's
Mm,
connected, because I talk about
yeah.
energy bodies as well, and the energy that resides in the fascia body, it's the same thing. It's all connected. We're not units of mechanical devices. It's
I always like to
organic.
think of it as, people think it's like this muscle and that bicep, tricep,
Yeah.
delta, but really it's just one suit that you step into, right? It's one
Yeah.
suit of muscle. You have to look at it that way, like a
Yeah.
wetsuit.
Yeah.
The muscles are there, your skeleton steps into it. A wetsuit of muscle
Yeah.
and fascia, and you have to think of everything as just being connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
fascinating.
Mm.
Well, awesome. This is so exciting for me. And I know Jen is nerding out with me
Yes.
as well. So I hope there's people out there enjoying it. But we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the therapy that you do and the work that you do with people. Stay tuned. Hi there, I'm Jen, co-host of the Elevated Feminine podcast,
Where real women have real conversations. If there's a topic you're passionate about and want to share your views and ideas, then we want to hear from you. Send us an email at elevatedfeminine9@gmail.com. We can hardly wait to have a conversation with you. Welcome back, everybody. This is our fascinating conversation today on the Elevated Feminine podcast. We're here with Jasmine talking about pelvic floor health. And if you've been with us thus far, you will have noticed how Jen and I are like enthralled by the conversation, and we're getting excited and we're nerding out about the human body and muscles and tissue and all that stuff. And so if you're following along with us and feeling nerdy, great. And if you're fascinated and curious and you're still with us, we're happy to have you. But we're here, we really want to know, Jasmine, how we can work with you, because you have a clinic practice, and can you give us a little bit of an idea of how, if people are listening to this and they want to learn more, how they can get in touch with you and what kind of work you do to help your clients with their pelvic floor health?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me. So I have a website, Mindful Movement Barbados. If you type in, and if you forget, you could type in pelvic floor Barbados and it will come up. Pelvic floor Barbados, me, it will come up. And all my contact info is there. I'm always willing to answer any questions. I would say email. My email is there. You can email. If you're here, you want to call, you can feel free to call and I'll answer any questions. And I'm on Instagram as well, Mindful Movement 246. I try to post a mixture of me moving to inspire people to move, and a mixture of pelvic health stuff, so you get a bit of education as well. My clinic is just a slow room, and it's like this way because I want everything to be one-on-one, right? So I want you to deal with me for the full 45 minutes. You have my full attention. And basically I do an assessment for your first, and then we make a plan to work together from there. I always tell people, I'm just here to kind of help you. You have the tools, I'm just showing them to you, and then you take it and you run with it. So yeah, that's me, Mindful Movement Barbados online, and then from there you can always reach out.
And do you work with people when you're working one-on-one? Do you mostly work with people in person? Do you ever do online stuff with people? I know you said you have to do like
So
physical assessments.
I do both. Yeah, I do both. So I work with people in person, and then the persons online as well, who, because sometimes people from Insta get an idea of, how they can get help, even if they can also point them in the direction of a physio in their country. I can also work with you online here as well. The thing is, for pelvic health, as much as yes, we want to do assessments, there's so much that we can learn from talking to you. Yeah,
Well,
and then there's so much
we
we
learned a
can
lot
teach
today.
you. Education for pelvic health is so key. Yeah, so sometimes somebody will say to me, like, I had one person, it was as simple as, I think her issue was constipation. So it was as simple as coaching her through, okay, let's talk about your diet. Let's talk about the way you sit on the toilet. Let's talk about you not straining and things like that. And that can just change somebody's symptoms overnight. So you don't need to be in person for me to do stuff like that. So definitely
Right.
we're online. I don't usually use Zoom. I use something called, and it wouldn't come to me right now, but it's for telehealth, for telemedicine. So I will
Okay.
use.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
So
great.
Yeah, no,
in person, online. If you're in Barbados and you want to ask your doctor for referral as well, it's always great, especially if you have insurance. You can say, look, and I think people need to take their health also into their hands and say, can I have a referral to pelvic physio? And that's why we talk about this. So you can ask for your referrals. And so even if you don't get a referral, you can feel free to call and ask the question and book and come and see me.
yeah, I mean, just to chime in, I didn't go to a doc. Well, I did go to a doctor when I first injured myself. It was a couple of years ago, and I was 6 weeks off, not doing any abdominal work or anything like that, and had to be very mindful, et cetera, et cetera. But it never felt right to me at all. So it just felt messed up. Still, like I was gonna have, like if I was on a plank or a sit up, I felt like I was gonna have like the alien pop out of my stomach. There was just this protrusion. I thought I had diastasis recti. And it was just last month in a Pilates class. First Pilates class I actually got to take in for I don't know how many years. And I mentioned to this instructor, who happened to be a friend, that I have this issue with my abs. And she goes, "Oh, why don't you go see Jasmine?" I'm like, "Really?
Yeah, you
She'd be able to help me with that." I messaged her, said, "Hey, Jasmine, I've got this going on. Would you be able to help?" She's like, "Of course." I'm like, "Really?" And I honestly never, I just did not make the connection. I've just been moving along, doing my best with it, trying to pay attention to how it feels when I'm doing certain things, not realizing how much that was impacting what was going on in my body, the whole scar tissue thing. So, I mean, I am so grateful to Jasmine and for taking that advice, because I could have just blown it off and not paying attention to it and continue to suffer or what have you. I mean, I wasn't in any pain, so I thought everything was okay, but it didn't feel right. And I think that speaks to what you're saying about taking control of your health. If something doesn't feel right in your body, there's a good chance something is not.
Yeah.
Talk about it, share it with someone, and the right person will probably hear and refer you to the right person. For example, what happened with me. And now I'm working towards being able to heal what's going on in here, and my abs are firing after 3 weeks, because I did the work. As she said, she provided me with the tools and the guidance, but it's not going to work if I don't do it myself. And that's what I want y'all to remember. You got to do it. There's no point going if you're not going to do it.
This podcast is the Elevated Feminine, right? And so we are talking to women. I just want to say, there's this big misconception around, if you have a painful period, it's painful period, just live with it. No, periods should not be painful to the point where you can't go to work, you can't go to school. So seek help, go to get a different opinion. Things like endometriosis and PCOS are very real. Around birth and postpartum, you think, okay, I'm having pain during my pregnancy, I'm leaking during my pregnancy, and you hear, well, that's normal. It's not. That's something you need to work on from during your pregnancy. Postpartum, you think, well, my abs aren't firing anymore. I have this diastasis, or I have honing. I am leaking when I run. I'm feeling heaviness in my vagina, all these things. I was like, well, I had a baby, so that's my lot in life. And no, it's not. Like, this is the misconception that we're trying to put away. You have a health physiotherapist during pregnancy. After, in France, I think you get 6 weeks of free pelvic health physiotherapy after you have a vaginal delivery.
Awesome.
Because they've realized, it's cheaper for us to pay for this than to have to pay for surgery later.
Right.
Because some prolapse, or because you have to have a surgery for anything else. So as women, we need to, don't succumb to the whole, this is it, and I have to live with it. You don't. And it's never too late to work on your pelvic floor and your core. Never, ever.
I guess that would mean too, for elderly people who have leaky problems as well, that even that would benefit for them as well.
And and the thing is, I always say, it doesn't start when we're old. It starts when we're young. It starts when we went and we probably lifted something incorrectly. It started when we had COVID and we were coughing a lot and we started leaking. It starts when we're in our 20s, 30s, early 40s, and then when we're in our 60s, time has passed, so it's gonna worse. And yes, as our hormones change, our pelvic floor will change, and we're likely to have pelvic floor symptoms. But a lot of these things, when I ask my patients, they'll say to me, yeah, I had a hysterectomy before. And a hysterectomy puts you at more risk of pelvic organ prolapse, one of your pelvic organs moving. So, and then you didn't address it at the time. You didn't go to a pelvic health physio. There's a doctor here who actually sends patients to me after they have their surgery, so we can prevent them from having those symptoms. So
Awesome.
yes, these things happen when you're older, but I don't subscribe to the fact that it's just when you get old it happens. It happens now in our youth,
Yeah.
and as time goes by, because we put it to the side, it gets worse. So we have to work on it now. I always say I'm working out for my old lady body. That's why I'm preparing for menopause. So women, we need to exercise, we need to look after our bodies, because we need these bodies to take us through into our 50s, our 60s, our 70s and beyond.
100%, 100%.
Yeah,
And I just
I
had
agree.
one more quick question is how are pelvic health issues related to menopause? Since you mentioned going into menopause, just out of curiosity,
Yes.
how are they related?
So when your estrogen levels drop, your pelvic floor so muscles love estrogen. So as those levels drop, you find like just hope you don't have as much muscle mass as we get older and we go into menopause and stuff. You'll find the pelvic floor might get a little weak, or it may get a little the tone might change. And so then you will get things like leakage, pelvic organ prolapse. And then when you get older, we can have hysterectomies when we're young, but usually also happen when we are older. And then you have taken a person who had X amount of children in in those years, who probably have pelvic floor dysfunction and didn't work on it. And then now they've gotten into menopause, they've gone to the point where they've had a hysterectomy later in life, and they have that on top of the dysfunction from before. So in terms of menopause, you definitely want to be thinking the changes that can happen in your hormone levels can affect how your pelvic floor functions, whether that is overactivity or underactivity. And so, as I said, lead to incontinence, especially and pelvic organ prolapse.
Good to know.
Oh,
I'm not going to let you say how old I am, but I'm closer to menopause than I am not.
I have no comment. No comment whatsoever. I always say keep moving until you can't. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
agreed.
I'm not there to menopause, but I feel it changes. Yeah, I feel
it's perimenopause. Perimenopause can start from as early as 30. So
yeah, and
everybody's different.
Because when my period is coming, like weeks before, I feel like doom. And that was not me before, you know, so I could see that the changes are happening.
And we welcome them with grace.
Grace and knowledge, empower ourselves about what is happening so we can have the grace and compassion for these beautiful bodies that are taking us through this.
Yes, exactly.
Agreed.
So before we wrap up, we always like to ask for one little nugget. And I know you kind of gave it before, but if you could give it again with helping people with the whole pelvic floor thing. One giant takeaway. You did mention it before, but I want you to come back to it. One takeaway that people could do to maybe implement into their life right now as it relates to their pelvic floor. And this is something that they could do that may not necessarily be, well, we don't know if it's tight or if it's not, but what is something that they can do anyways just to connect to it?
Breathing. Yeah, so breathing is so important. Think, diaphragmatic breathing. Jen, you were saying something?
So I was going to ask you to, let's just describe it one more time for those of us that might be now tuning in, who might have missed that.
Yeah, for sure.
How to visualize that breath, where you want that breath to go.
Yeah, your diaphragmatic breathing is what you want to tune into. And I was going to say, if you go on YouTube and you look for a video of pelvic health physio explain diaphragmatic breathing, you can't go wrong. You want to think inhale, my ribs and my body expand. You're not actually sticking your tummy out. Never think I'm going to poke my tummy out on purpose, because if we poke our tummies out, our pelvic floor is going to go down too much, and we don't want that. So you just want a normal, nice long breath in. I think my ribs expand, my tummy expands. If your back could expand, it would. And think that your pelvic floor expanding. This is also great for anybody who has pelvic pain, prepping for labor, on the toilet. If you're struggling to stool, this will help because your pelvic floor will relax and everything will come out. Exhale, everything deflates, right? And you can practice that. I always say set a timer for a few minutes and practice. It's also good to help you relax, down-regulate. So breathing is key. The reason why is because it's going to help your pelvic floor to coordinate with the rest of your core, which is what we want.
Right.
And I think when I'm doing my activities, I'm going to breathe. If I'm closing a window, I'm going to breathe. Especially if you know you do have pelvic floor issues, you want to think, I'm going to breathe out when I'm closing a window. If I'm pulling something, I'm going to breathe out. If I'm lifting something, I'm going to breathe out. Even if you're not sure how to engage your core in that moment, the breathing out
Breathe out.
itself is going to help. And it's not a blow. You're just flickering candles. You're not blowing hard. It's a nice, gentle blow when you do whatever it is that you're doing. Picking your baby out of a crib, anything like that. You want to think, I'm going to breathe out as I do it. And if you can't remember, just breathe. Don't hold your breath.
Yes.
Right. No,
If
that's
nothing
great.
else, don't hold your breath. Number one thing in power yoga is don't hold your breath, keep breathing, exhale on the contraction.
Exactly.
And I always say, chances are if you have to hold your breath to do something, it's too much. So if it's too heavy, so you can break this down into smaller parts. It's better to make more on one trip than to try to lift everything in one trip and then you hurt yourself. And if I can just add one more takeaway is Kegels are not the answer to everything.
Yes.
When it comes to pelvic floor.
Yes.
I think that was a big reconfirmed takeaway for me today because Kegels have been around since the dark ages. We've been doing it forever.
While you're meeting your age, sipping your coffee. Yeah, because it's so easy to do, right?
Yeah.
In traffic. Are you doing one now?
I was.
And I always say, if your pelvic physio gave you Kegels to do in patients say, yeah, I did it here and I did it there. It's like, but you don't do your exercises that way. You don't go around, say, like, a bicep curl here and a hamstring curl there. You actually have your mindful.
Can you imagine?
Who's my glass of water?
Oh, can you imagine? That would be hilarious. But I guess for me, if I didn't get it in when I was supposed to, and I can get it in, then that's how I would think about it. Because I remember I did share that with you. I didn't remember to get this something done here when I was doing everything else. But I try to put in. But yeah, could you imagine randomly doing bicep curls? I'm just gonna work my right bicep.
Wait for the bus. It's all good.
Well, waiting for the bus.
Exactly.
I think we should do that. I think we should. That's the challenge for the next week. Is how many random exercises can you do in the most unusual places? Oh my goodness. Well, listeners, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as Nicole and I did, and Jasmine too, because I watched you the entire time and I could see the passion just exuding from you. It's a really important topic. I had no idea that the pelvic floor was such a powerful muscle, and learning from you and how you break it down and make it so accessible and easy to understand and appreciate. And nothing that you said scared the heck out of me, because when you talk to professionals about certain things, the things they tell you, you're kind of afraid. But I'm not afraid. I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like I've elevated my feminine, and I know a whole lot about pelvic floor health now. And I hope that everyone benefited from this. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and be here with us and to share your knowledge. And to show us too, because I didn't know they had so many tools. And I deeply, deeply appreciate you and everything that you offer. And I hope you'll come back and share some other information with us. I have a feeling we barely touched the surface.
We barely scratched. But thank you for this space and for having me and having this discussion for women, because it's needed. Yeah, you always say it. Yeah. Thank you as well.
And we're going to put all the contact details for how to get in touch with Jasmine in the description. So if you want to connect with her, which we hope that you do,
please feel free to connect.
Or if you know someone that can benefit from her services, please share. She's amazing. She really, really is.
Well, thank you.
And so you're so welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
So, yes, listeners, thank you for being here. And we'll be back really soon for another Elevated Feminine podcast where real women have real conversations. See ya.